She thought it was just another trip through the airport until one officer's actions changed everything. Watch till the end, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. The morning at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International felt choreographed, a smooth current of rolling suitcases and clipped footsteps braided with intercom chimes. Overhead, a soft wash of fluorescent light flattened the scurry of color, sports team hoodies, navy blazers, floral carry-ons, into a single, moving pattern. Announcements rose and fell like waves. Final calls, gate changes, the polite reminders about unattended baggage. Metal belt slats rattled as another carousel flickered to life. Tanisha Williams stood just beyond the yellow line at Carousel 6, palms resting on the pull handle of her scuffed graphite suitcase, eyes on the rubber curtain where bags blinked into view and thunked onto the belt. Her boarding pass, creased along one edge, was tucked into the back of her phone case. On the screen, a thin progress bar showed an almost finished download. She glanced at it out of habit and let the phone dim again. Around her, people did the familiar airport dance. Take 2 steps forward, peer for a bag, step back, clear the aisle. The air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant, with a cool undercurrent of conditioned air from vents high above. A family to her left tried to wrangle a stroller over the curb of floor tile. A pair of college students to her right argued about whether rideshare pickup was upstairs or down. It was the kind of background noise that makes a place feel safe precisely because it is ordinary. She heard him before she saw him. A tempo difference inside the soft chaos. Heavier soles, authoritative cadence, the clipped rhythm of a walk that expected the space to part. When the uniformed figure stopped near her, dark navy shirt, silver nameplate, radio mic coiled to his shoulder, Tanisha's first thought was that someone nearby must have lost a wallet or a passport. Airport police did that sometimes, moving through the crowd with practiced calm, asking short, helpful questions. "Ma'am?" The voice was even, not loud, but it carried. "What are you doing in this area?" Tanisha turned. The officer was in his 40s, pale-eyed beneath the brim of his cap, posture squared into the practiced lines of authority. His nameplate read, Holmes. The airport patch at his shoulder showed the familiar Phoenix and runway seal. She followed his glance down to the carousel, then back to his face. "I'm waiting for my bag," she said, matching his calm. "Carousel 6." His expression didn't change. "I need to see your ID." She blinked, not out of fear but surprise, the kind that skews ordinary seconds out of true. "My ID? Sure." Her hand went to her backpack strap, then paused. "Can I ask why?" "Loitering," he said. The word arrived without emphasis, like a box checked. "We've had reports of suspicious behavior in this area. I'm asking for identification." Tanisha felt the ground shift beneath the word. She glanced around once more at the cluster of people doing exactly what she was doing, standing, watching a conveyor belt, waiting for luggage that never seemed to appear soon enough. The carousel spat out a hardshell case with neon straps. Someone cheered, then apologized when the cheer startled a toddler. Ordinary. "I'm standing at baggage claim," she said, keeping her voice level, measured. "Just like everyone else." "Your ID, ma'am." He waited, chin lifting a fraction. The radio on his chest crackled softly with a voice from somewhere else, then went quiet. Tanisha drew a breath through her nose, steadying it in her chest. 100 airport trips taught you to choose calm, to move with the current, to be small in places designed to make you feel small. She slid her wallet from the side pocket of her backpack, thumbed past a library card and a coffee shop punch card, and rested her fingers on her driver's license without removing it. "Officer Holmes," she said, reading his plate, offering him the smallest courtesy of his name. "I'll show you my ID. I also want to understand why you're asking me specifically. I've been here—" She glanced at the digital clock above the carousel. "Maybe 10 minutes." His gaze didn't follow hers to the clock. You were observed lingering without approaching the belt. You're not retrieving luggage. I am, she said, a touch of incredulity cooling into steel. Carousel 6 flight just arrived. He shifted his weight. Behind him, a different belt clunked and stuttered. His hand hovered near his utility belt, not on the holster, not on the cuffs, just a casual rest at the midpoint of power. Where are you coming from? From a flight, she said, then caught herself and softened it. I just landed, sir. That wasn't my question. She could feel the tiny muscles at the base of her neck tighten. Not fear. Focus. I'd like to know if I'm being detained, she said. The sentence came out smooth, careful, a well-worn phrase said 1,000 times in 1,000 videos. And yet, now it felt suddenly personal in her mouth. Or am I free to wait for my luggage like everyone else? A shadow of irritation crossed his face, quick as a blink and gone. I'm conducting a field inquiry, he said. When an officer asks for ID, you provide it. That's how this works. Georgia isn't a stop and identify state for passengers at baggage claim, she said. The words surprised her, not because she didn't know them, but because she hadn't planned to use them today, here, under this light with this man's gaze tipped like a weight onto her chest. If there's reasonable suspicion I've committed a crime, you can explain what it is. Otherwise, I'm waiting for my bag. He took half a step closer, not enough to invade the 6 feet of courtesy, but enough to make the air feel smaller. You've been asked to present ID. Refusing me right now looks like non-compliance. The belt whirred. A duffel with a baseball team patch slid past. A woman with a neck pillow pretended not to look, then did look. Tanisha kept her eyes on the officer. She could feel her pulse, not racing, just present, a metronome behind the sternum. I didn't refuse, she said steady. I asked why. If you can tell me why, I'll show you my ID. His jaw worked once. Ma'am. Officer? For a second, it was as if the airport quieted around them, the white noise fading to a hiss, the carousel's rattle thinning to a needle in the air. Then, as if on cue, everything rushed back. Rolling wheels, the squeal of a child tugging free of a parent's hand, the chime of another announcement somewhere behind them. A bag that looked like Tanisha's, same graphite gray, same fraying pull tab, nosed out of the rubber curtain and started its slow parade along the belt. She tracked it, reflexively, then checked the scuffed corner. Not hers. Close, though. Where are you headed next? Officer Holmes asked, loud enough now to carry a little further than before. Why are you still here if your flight's landed? Because my bag hasn't, she said. The carousel cycles. It's how this works. He didn't look at the conveyor. You traveling alone? She hesitated, not because she owed him the answer, but because answering meant accepting the frame he'd set, the one where the ordinary logic of baggage claim needed to be defended like a thesis. Yes, she said evenly. He glanced past her shoulder at a laminated sign about oversized baggage. Do you have a claim ticket? It's electronic. She tapped the top of her phone without waking it. On my boarding pass. He nodded to the phone. Show me that. My boarding pass? She asked as neutrally as she could. To prove I flew in. To prove you're not loitering, he said the word again, dull and blunt. She exhaled, tasting the thin dryness of circulated air. Officer Holmes, I'm not loitering. I'm waiting for a piece of luggage on the carousel. Designated for my flight, I haven't blocked any exits, I haven't left the secure area, I haven't approached anyone, I haven't done anything except stand in line with everyone else. Something sardonic flickered in his eyes. Everyone else isn't challenging me over basic questions. She let the silence sit. 2 beats. 3. The belt coughed out a boxy cardboard tube wrapped in tape. A man in a suit lunged for it, then laughed when it kept going, jogging 3 steps to catch up. The air felt the same and not the same. No immediate audience, no ring of phones raised at chest height, but a current had shifted, a tiny seam torn in the fabric of normal. "Are you recording me?" he asked suddenly, chin tipping to her phone. She blinked. "Number, my phone's in sleep mode." "You can't record in secure areas," he said. "This isn't a secure checkpoint," she answered, then caught the sharpness in her own voice and filed it smooth. "We're at baggage claim." He let the point dangle, unacknowledged, and set his stance a shade wider, boots gripping the tile. The radio hissed again, a spill of code numbers that meant more to him than to any passerby. He didn't touch it. "Last time," he said. "Your ID." Tanisha slid the driver's license halfway from its sleeve. She could have handed it over then and there, could have let him glance, hand it back, and maybe the moment would have collapsed under its own weight and rattled away like a suitcase on the wrong track. But the word loitering hung there, wrong as a note out of tune, and the certainty that she'd been selected, not for what she'd done, but for how she occupied the space, settled into her bones with a quiet, heavy clarity. "I'll show you my ID," she said, "if you explain the reasonable suspicion that applies to me, specifically." "Not a general report, not a word you're using to make me move. Reasonable suspicion. For me." His mouth thinned. For the first time, he glanced around, quick, assessing, at no one in particular. Behind Tanisha, a boy in a puffy jacket rolled a coin along the rim of a suitcase and watched it fall. A janitorial cart glided past, the mop bucket sloshing, the faint chemical tang of cleanser marking its wake. Far above them, a muted cheer rose from a TV tuned to morning sports. "You're making this more difficult than it needs to be," he said. "Comply, and you'll be on your way." "I am on my way," she said softly. "I'm just not moving." The belt ticked. A second graphite case edged from the curtain and began its slow lap. This one had a scuffed corner and a faded baggage tag looped through the handle. Tanisha's attention snagged on it, but the moment with the officer held her in place, like a velvet rope across an empty lane. "Ma'am," he said, and in the single syllable she heard the decision harden, the line being drawn. "Don't make me ask again." She slid the license back into the wallet and closed it with a quiet click. The choice was not a dare, not a drama, not a wish for spectacle. It was a tether to herself, to the ordinariness of waiting by a carousel under two bright lights on a morning that had been scheduled down to the minute, until it wasn't. "Officer Holmes," she said, voice quiet but clear, "either tell me I'm being detained, and for what, or allow me to continue waiting for my luggage." For a beat, there was only the white noise of the terminal and the hum of electricity in the bones of the building. Then his jaw set. The floor seemed to tilt a fraction toward whatever came next. Somewhere beyond them, an intercom chimed. Flight 287's bags were arriving on Carousel 6. The space around Carousel 6 had shifted. What had begun as an exchange between two people now carried the static charge of an audience. Travelers who had been focused on their own baggage searches found their eyes drawn to the scene, first in quick stolen glances, then in open stares. The ebb and flow of footsteps slowed, as if some invisible thread tethered their attention to the uniformed officer and the woman who stood her ground. Officer Richard Holmes's posture had changed, too. His spine was straighter, his chest forward, shoulders squared in a way that broadcast both authority and the expectation of compliance, but in his voice there was an edge, a faint tremor beneath the command, a trace of frustration that his questions hadn't been met with immediate surrender. "Ma'am," he repeated, louder this time, the sound carrying over the rumble of the conveyor belt. "I'm telling you one last time to present your identification." Tanisha Williams kept her chin level, her breathing even. "I've already explained my position," she said. "I'm waiting for my bag. Unless you can give me a lawful reason for detaining me, I'm within my rights." The words hung in the air like a challenge, though her tone remained measured. Around them, the carousel clunked and shuddered, spitting out more luggage, bright duffels, dented hard cases, and cardboard boxes wrapped in duct tape. but the noise now served only as background to the thickening tension in the foreground. Holmes stepped closer, narrowing the gap between them. "You're refusing a lawful order. That can lead to arrest." "I'm refusing an unlawful one," she replied, just loud enough to be heard by those gathering within earshot. Several phones were now raised at chest height, lenses trained on the interaction. A young man in a gray hoodie, leaning against a pillar, held his camera steady while glancing between his screen and the officer. An older couple a few steps back exchanged uneasy looks, the wife whispering something into her husband's ear. From the edge of the growing circle stepped a man in a dark suit, tall, clean-shaven, carrying himself with the unhurried confidence of someone accustomed to standing in courtrooms. He had been watching for a while, his brows knitting as the questions became sharper and the tone more aggressive. Finally, he moved forward. "Officer," he began, his voice calm but firm. "I'm Marcus Hudson. I'm an attorney, and I've been observing this exchange. Could you explain why you're questioning this woman?" Holmes turned slightly, caught off guard by the interruption. "Sir, this is none of your concern. Please step back." "I think it is," Marcus replied. "You've accused her of loitering at baggage claim. From what I've seen, she's doing exactly what everyone else here is doing, waiting for her luggage. Are you detaining her?" "That's not the point." Holmes started, but Marcus didn't let him finish. "It's exactly the point. Either she's detained, in which case you must state the reason, or she's free to go. Which is it?" The question cut through the air, simple and direct. People shifted, their attention sharpening. Even those who hadn't been following the details could feel the shift in power. Holmes froze for a heartbeat, the words lodging themselves in the narrow space between authority and caution. His eyes swept the crowd again, calculating. Marcus didn't waste the moment. "So, Officer Holmes, what's it going to be? You can step back and let her wait for her bag, like everyone else, or you can double down on an unlawful stop in front of all these cameras." For the first time since the confrontation began, Holmes seemed uncertain. He looked at Tanisha, then at Marcus, then over the heads of the crowd as if searching for backup. Or maybe an exit from a situation spinning out of his control. A bag that matched Tanisha's came onto the carousel, gliding slowly toward her. She didn't move to get it. The luggage might as well have been on the other side of the world. The standoff held her in place. The air felt heavy, charged. This was the point where things could tip either way, toward de-escalation or toward an arrest that would ignite the room. And the tension at Carousel 6 snapped like a cable, when a voice from behind the crowd called out, "Make way! Airport security!" Heads turned as two figures pushed through, a tall woman in a captain's uniform and another officer in a crisp navy shirt. The woman's nameplate read, "Harper," her expression already hard with focus. She scanned the scene in a single sweep, taking in the crowd, the raised phones, Tanisha standing still, Marcus poised in front of her, and Officer Holmes squared up as if ready for a fight he hadn't expected to go public. "Officer Holmes," Captain Linda Harper said, her voice low but edged with authority. "What's going on here?" Holmes straightened immediately. "This passenger was loitering in the baggage claim area. I was conducting an ID check when she refused to comply." Linda's gaze slid to Tanisha. "Ma'am, is that true?" Tanisha spoke clearly, each word deliberate. "I was waiting for my luggage just like everyone else. He singled me out, demanded my ID without giving me a lawful reason. I asked him if I was being detained and for what reason. He never answered." Marcus stepped forward slightly. "Captain, I'm Marcus Hudson, an attorney. I've been here since the start. There was no disturbance, no suspicious behavior, nothing to justify the stop. This officer is out of line, and there are multiple witnesses and recordings to prove it." Linda glanced around at the semicircle of bystanders, many nodding, a few holding their phones higher in silent confirmation. "Anyone here willing to give a statement?" Several voices answered at once. "I saw everything. I've got video. I was recording from the moment he walked up to her." Holmes shifted his stance, the color rising in his face. "Ma'am, with respect, these people don't know the whole situation." Linda cut him off. "Then enlighten me. What exactly made her suspicious enough to approach?" Holmes hesitated, and in that pause, the entire room seemed to lean forward. She was standing near the carousel without retrieving luggage. Linda's eyebrows lifted a fraction. "Like dozens of other passengers right now?" She gestured to the surrounding travelers, some scrolling on their phones, some watching the belt, others chatting idly as they waited for their bags. Holmes opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence was telling. Linda turned back to Tanisha. "Ma'am, do you have your baggage claim number?" Tanisha nodded, unlocking her phone and showing the electronic boarding pass. Linda glanced at it, then at the carousel where a graphite suitcase, hers, was now coming into view. "That yours?" Linda asked. "Yes." "Go ahead and take it," Linda said, her tone softer now. As Tanisha stepped forward, Marcus moved with her, his eyes never leaving Holmes. Once Tanisha had her suitcase, Linda addressed her in front of everyone. "On behalf of the airport police department, I apologize for this incident. You were within your rights to wait for your luggage, and you should not have been treated otherwise." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Approval, relief, and quiet satisfaction. Phones caught every word. Holmes shifted again, his jaw tight. Linda turned to him. "Officer Holmes, we'll discuss your conduct in my office now." Her tone left no room for argument. Holmes gave Tanisha one last look, hard, unreadable, then followed Linda out of the circle, the other officer falling in behind them. Marcus exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "You handled yourself perfectly," he told Tanisha. "And you've got plenty of witnesses. This won't end here." Around them, the crowd began to disperse, but not before a few people stepped forward to offer Tanisha their contact information, promising to share their videos. The incident might have been over in the terminal, but in the eyes of everyone there, it had only just begun. By the time Tanisha Williams rolled her suitcase out of the terminal and into the crisp Atlanta air, the videos were already spreading across social media. Clips taken from different angles showed the same scene: Officer Richard Holmes questioning her without cause, raising his voice, and refusing to answer when she asked if she was being detained. In every recording, Marcus Hudson's calm, deliberate voice cut through, demanding lawful justification. And in every clip, the crowd's quiet outrage was visible in the set of their shoulders and the raised cameras in their hands. Within hours, hashtags bearing Tanisha's name were trending. News outlets picked up the story, showing side-by-side footage from multiple witnesses. The narrative was impossible to ignore. An African-American woman, targeted without reason in a public space, standing her ground while a stranger, an attorney, stepped in to defend her rights. That evening, a statement from the airport police department confirmed that an internal investigation had been opened. Behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting. Civil rights groups demanded transparency. Local politicians called for immediate accountability. Former passengers began sharing their own experiences of uncomfortable or biased encounters with airport police, and more than once, Holmes's name surfaced in those accounts. 3 days later, the investigation's first findings were leaked. Officer Holmes had been the subject of multiple prior complaints for racial profiling and inappropriate conduct toward passengers. None had resulted in formal discipline, but the volume and similarity of the reports painted a damning picture. The leak only intensified public outrage. A week after the incident, the police department released its official decision. Richard Holmes was terminated, effective immediately, and barred from seeking employment in any other law enforcement agency under the department's jurisdiction. The statement cited clear violations of policy and conduct unbecoming of an officer, as well as failure to adhere to constitutional standards during public interactions. For Tanisha, the days that followed were a whirlwind. She received messages of support from across the country: students, parents, fellow travelers, strangers who saw in her a reflection of their own experiences. Civil rights organizations invited her to speak about what had happened, and lawmakers included her case in discussions about reforms to airport policing procedures. When she met Marcus Hudson again a month later, it was at a community forum on civil rights and public safety. The two spoke quietly before the event began. "You didn't just stand your ground," Marcus told her. "You showed people they don't have to accept being singled out for nothing. That's not easy to do in the moment." Tanisha smiled faintly. "I had help." "You had courage," he countered. Later that evening, as she spoke to the audience, Tanisha recounted the moment she decided not to hand over her ID without cause. She described the knot in her chest, the weight of eyes on her, the fear that things could escalate, and how that fear was met by something stronger. "This wasn't about one officer," she told them. "It's about a system that lets moments like that happen unless people speak up. And it's about the power of witnesses, of technology, of people who refuse to look away." Her words were met with steady applause. Somewhere in the back, Marcus nodded once, a quiet confirmation that the moment in the airport, tense, uncertain, and painfully public, had transformed into something larger. What could have been an unchecked act of harassment had become a catalyst for change. For Richard Holmes, a few minutes of bias had ended a career. For Tanisha Williams, those same minutes had become proof that standing firm, with the truth and the law on your side, could turn a single confrontation into a lasting statement heard far beyond the baggage claim. One moment sparked a wave of change. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.